We might do something very light before we go for food. What about defining the strategies and the methodologies for the future of humanism for the world? Be a good light theme. Yeah, exactly. So we heard a lot of interesting speakers, and they all had some different visions, issues, and aspects that are relevant for humanism. So Cristina had the idea of synthesizing all the big themes that we heard during the conference, to sum them up in 10 different topics. And the idea would be that for every country present at this conference, you would just make a top 5. I don't need to know what is the most important or the less important, but you just take the 5 topics that are really critical, that are crucial in your country to work on. The idea is that then we sum up for every country the quantity of top 5 and then that we will synthesize a list of the 5 most important issues. Then, because it's good to sum up the problems and to know how grave it is, and in some countries some issues are already solved, in some others there's still a lot of work to do. The idea would be after that for the 5 most critical themes, we would group you up and that you would be able to work in group and just define a few ideas, a few methodologies, a few solutions that we could, so we can have a really worksheet about what we can do in our countries to solve the most important issues. So I just maybe think about it for a few seconds, look at the themes. There is discrimination. Well, there is a lot of human rights violation and discrimination of humanism, which is a grave topic in some countries more than others. Well, a lot of people talked about the bad image, about the fact that a lot of people hate us and really misunderstand us. So the humanists are not ethical, help me? Persons. Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of people question our ethical values and our moral values. In some countries it's more grave than others. We have the religious indoctrination, which is grave in a lot of the speakers refer to it. The collaboration between state and church, or the separation between church and state, which in some countries is completely solved, in others is really a hot issue. Aggression towards humanists. We heard a few examples of people who got beat up because they were stating humanist statements, and so in Macedonia it was, I think. So yeah, in some countries it's a worse issue than others. We have reproductive freedom, so abortion, the right to decide in your own body for a woman when you can have a child or not, which in some countries is completely illegal and others is already legalized since many years. The LGBTQ rights, you all know what LGBTQ is. No, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and kinky. No, Q rights. Yeah. Then the scientific integrity. Yeah, in some places the scientific integrity is questioned. Can you say something more about that? Because it's her workshop basically, so I'm just her assistant right now. Then we have an, what is this? Anapathic? Anapathic. I don't know that word. Apathetic. We have a apathetic, yeah. A pathetic civil society who doesn't give a shit about... Oh, no, apathic. Apathic. So it's like a lame, sleepy civil society who doesn't care about our values. And the last but not least, the lack of humanists in power structures. So we heard in some countries there were a lot of humanists in the parliament and decisional structures, in others less. So I don't know if you have a list of the countries present, or you just know them by heart. Is there a country that already says, I know my top 5? All right, so wonderful.
There's no such thing. Germany will hire a speaker from the Humanist Association for marriages and also when someone died. So that's very important. Because people, we option to not do something.
So what other kind of indoctrination there besides schools, besides religious I guess that's what I was going to say about the media.
I just learned the book that you're going to get the book and give it to kindergartens, giving away books you can do that. So you can go to the army, for example, and give to their library, or go to libraries in all countries of the world. There's a lack of such
That's a good idea, but I don't know how many people live in libraries anymore.
Is at the same time the judge and the jury for themselves, because I'm trying to attack the government, but the only place I can go to is the government, and every response, for example, this law is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So the response I get,
the constitutional judges are the lawmakers.
Exactly, the response I get, they were made by the constitutional judges, they work according to the constitution, so there is no way that law they can be unconstitutional.
That's a national problem, but you see, taking it to the international level, that's impossible, because there are jurists, lawmakers from all over the world, and lawyers, international lawyers, and so I think that's the only...
There's something that obliges them to listen.
Yeah, I mean,
the Special Court for the Human Rights Court, which is, I think, in Geneva, but I'm not sure. You can take the process to them, you can actually sue the Serbian state, and you can win, and they will have to listen to the court. There are many cases in Romania of people whose land was confiscated by the communists back in the days, and now they are reclaiming the land, and the state doesn't want to give them the land, so they go to the Human Rights Constitutional Court, and they win the process there, and the state is forced for them to give them the land. Don't split it like Nazareth.
Yes.
Don't split it like into 10 different campaigns like you.
Yeah, it's so not to double them. If it already exists, just try to support it. If it doesn't, maybe try to
Try to initiate.
Exactly. Maybe something on the more personal level, like, you know, Greek meet and ethics or Greek and ethics, but with LGBT people. But maybe in a safe environment, like not out in the streets, because you put them in a violent situation maybe, but like meet and greet with a more restricted audience, let's say, in order to that
in Malta, your property can be expropriated by the state to build a church. That's another example. Well, Romania public citizens are yeah, we had a new school built up from ground zero. It was new. They said we cannot open the school because we don't have money for teachers and for health repository. So what did they do the next year? They gave it to the Orthodox Church. And we had a meeting and so on, but nothing happened.
Yeah, I think the copyright example is actually a good example where you could actually look at how you can challenge that on a legally, and also how you can get parties involved which are like non-religious, and for example, Estonia or something, you know, like the actual people who have actual like money interest in protecting their rights and that, and like get other parties involved with so like okay, this situation.
I really like the way you identify stories like what we're passionate about, like when I
are not totally against us, but are just waiting like
Those are easy things to sell.
Pass a law, an EU level law, that forbids the teaching of religion in schools.
Not only EU, maybe Council of Europe also, because we also target Moldova, Azerbaijan, Russia, and so on.
Okay. But we already think that this is a bit too high of a goal. Until this can happen, we suggested an alternative that we should try to establish a university-level course that teaches history of religion and how you should teach that to children. So this would be independent of the churches. This would be a completely humanistic study, and only the people who were accredited through this course should be able to teach religion in schools. Okay. And we thought of a potential problem, even if these laws would be currently applied. There's the problem that private schools, sometimes they don't apply the law in the same manner because they have this freedom to do as they like. So there would need to be someone who keeps them in check, so who checks up if they don't indoctrinate, even if it's against the law. Okay. As a particular tool, we thought of a coordinated online campaign that would present all the religions. So everyone would have a chance to, the children especially, to familiarize themselves with other religions. So it's not just that they only hear about the religion they're born in. Besides children, of course, adults can convert as well, and they also are in our target group. So we would target them through humanist celebrations and communities, because there's no alternative currently to religion. Only in a very few places there are humanist celebrations, for example, and this would be a good thing if this would spread, so everyone would have the opportunity to have such an alternative. And also in, for example, hospitals or prison, there are religious chaplains, for example. And I know of in Britain, maybe, that there is a humanist chaplaincy, and this should be also spread. Yeah. Oh, that's good. In Belgium too, so that's good. That should be spread across Europe, because that's a great idea. And
humanist chaplains.
Chaplain. So it's not necessarily a priest, but someone who comes and talks to you if you're, for example, in the hospital and you're sick, and he talks to you about how to deal with it.
You're
yeah.
talking about the room
not chapel.
where you can pray to
No, chaplain. So, sorry. Yeah, humanist counselor, yeah. Okay, we also thought of another campaign. This could be similar to the atheist bus campaign that asks a few smart questions regarding religion and religion's role in society. And the last thing, a very political idea, that in order to get these laws passed in any level of Parliament or the EU or the Council of Europe, we should try to lobby the politicians during 2 elections. So they have their whole term, they have the time to change their mind if they don't necessarily agree with us. So maybe this way we have a better chance to have a bigger impact.
Great idea.
Thanks.
Thank you, team number 2. Is number 1 ready?
we had the topic of discrimination, and so every human rights violation. This was a huge topic, and some things overlapped in also your area. But we focused particularly on four basic human rights violations that occur in the countries which were represented in our discussion group. And for each of these problems, there are two approaches, we think. The legal approach and the civil awareness approach. And so first I'm going to talk about the legal approach, which is similar basically in every one of them. The first problem is the discrimination against ethnic minorities. For example, we heard of problems in at least 3 countries for the, I don't know how we call the Rom ethnic, or the Gypsies, yeah. I don't know if that's offensive, but... Roma, okay, yeah. And so, for example, we think that the only legal solution would be to have mixed classes in schools with people from different ethnicities, so that children are used to grow up in a multicultural society, and therefore they'll know people from other ethnicities, and so that once it shows by data, by polls, that if you know someone from a specific minority, you're less probably to discriminate against that minority. So that's very important, and that's something that only the government could do, to pass a law that says mixed classes. And another thing that has come out of this group as well is the cultural studies and ethnical and ethical history studies. So know the history of every ethnicity, of every group around the world, so that at least you know something and you don't base your judgment only on prejudice. Second problem is the freedom of expression, and we found out that in every country basically there is a double standard that infringes over the freedom of expression, so that we non-believers do not have the right to criticize or satirize religious ideas, but religious people are very free to insult us and offend us because we're atheists. And so that's a clear double standard. And I think that we thought that the first step to improve that situation would be the end of all the blasphemy laws and the improvement of the legal system in the countries, which again can be achieved on an international court of human rights. Then we have the problem that it is in many countries recognized the freedom of religion, but not the freedom from religion. This is a topic that has been discussed in many other lectures. And again, it is a clear misinterpretation of Article 18 of the Human Rights Declaration. So basically, again, there is the Human Rights Court, and that's it. I mean, any singular person can appeal to the Human Rights Court against his own state, his or her state, and of course the court will be forced to give rights to our positions, and therefore the state will be obliged by the international law to accord to that sentence. And then we just started before the end to discuss about sexism and disequality between men and women. For example, in job salaries, men tend to be paid more for the same job respect a woman. And so we thought that legally speaking, again, the first step would be harsher punishments for those employers who enact such things. But alongside all these legal, technical, political decisions, we think that it is crucial to raise social and cultural awareness, because the problem is that many of these legal fights against injustice, against discrimination and human rights violation go on silently without the media attention. The Raif Badawi campaign, for example, does not have that much support by the media, and so on. And so, alongside all these juridical problems, we also have to raise consciousness and reach out for the middle ground. So there are obviously a number of people that agree with us and a number of people who openly disagree and fights us. But there is a large middle ground of people who are undecided and to whom we have to reach out and discuss with them and argue and debate and dialogue with them, and bringing our arguments, who are based on reason and human rights, so pretty convincing arguments in a conversation. And so we have really to reach that minority, that majority of people who can overpower the minority of hate speakers. And so that would get more people interested in the problem, so more people going into streets and campaigning, and so therefore getting media attention. And that's essential for any campaign. Also, it shouldn't happen, but a court is more likely to give a sentence in your favor if there is big media and social and cultural attention to your problem. So we came up with these problems and solutions. I know that doesn't cover all the discrimination problems, but that's the best we could do in 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And maybe group number 3? Group number 3 is the one busy with collaboration between church and state and or separation between church and state.
Thank you. My name is Fabio. I'm here for group number 3, and the issue is here the wonderful partnership between state and church. Our group identified 4 large solutions to this issue. Number 1 and number 2 are closely related, but we kind of keep them on a fine line separated. Number 1, raising awareness to the civil society. How can we do that? By organizing different workshops and conferences, free to the public, raising their awareness and, I don't know, teaching them about different things so they can have an option to their beliefs. Number 2, public campaigns. Also, we are raising awareness, but we are doing somewhat with another process, like billboards or social media. So we're not getting close in contact with the people, the public. Number 3 would be the needing of autonomous public institutions. Why? Because, for example, if the church would be autonomous from the state, they could get their major financing privately and then stop getting it from the state, from the government, from our public financing. Number 4 would be pointing out political successes and pointing out specific examples of immoral acts of clergy. Or there was in America in the late 60s till now copyright infringement from the Church of America, and then in the late 80s in Western Europe, like a band, like a heavy metal band being very popular and identifying with the youth. Then the clergy made the copycat band, being the same costume, the same music, but with biblical lyrics. So they praised God with heavy metal. And there is also Christian black metal, if anybody knows black metal. It's the same inverted chords, but it's with Christian lyrics. So you yell out satanic voices to God. Oh, praise thy Lord, your soul. So these are the 4 major solutions that
we could identify and possibly work, if we work together, to kind of cut their reproduction system from the state and church.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have group number 4. You're all awesome, by the way. I just, yeah, I had to. LGBTQ rights. There you go.
So we have realized that there will be a bit of overlap between what humanist organizations can do and what LGBT organizations can do. So take each of our suggestions, like supporting the action if it's already done by an organization, or initiating it if it's not there. So I'm going to start, first of all, lobbying MPs on this issue, obviously. Then have celebrities speaking for LGBTQ rights. A very good idea is like forming groups of heterosexuals showing support for LGBTQ friends, and okay, and obviously us as humanists and humanist associations associate and support LGBT NGOs in our countries if they exist. Okay, educate people on the science behind gay and transsexual people and so on and so forth, like make it obvious for everybody that it's not a choice, it's not a lifestyle that you choose, it's something that, yeah, it's not a disease, it's not a choice, it's just how you are born, and there's the science behind it, okay, and people don't know this, so they should, okay. Then contact universities in our country to declare themselves LGBT friendly, because if they would do that, they wouldn't be able to overtly support all kind of conferences that just spread hate around. Okay, campaigns to change forms, like if in a public forum by a state institution, you have to declare your gender, and you usually have only male and female, and have like other, or I don't want to declare it, or another options that you can choose. This is very important for transsexual people, change the legislation in the countries in order to be able to change your gender and your name to the one you feel, not the one you were assigned. In many countries, I don't think the legislation is up to date, and it makes a lot of trouble for people in this category. Make events such as met an LGBTQ person, but somewhere in small, safe environments, like not in the streets because it may cause violence and stuff, but maybe in a more controlled environment. Then in countries in which their situation is very, very bad, maybe campaign in other countries for asylum for LGBTQ people in order to be able to leave that country and live in a safer place. Generally, in those countries in which it's very bad, just give them a voice, give them a safe community where they can be. And another idea, if there are bars and restaurants in the city that are supportive of LGBTQ people and couples, show them, like, go to them and show them an option to declare themselves as such, maybe with a sticker at the entrance or something that LGBTQ people would know that they are safe and welcomed in there. So these were our ideas. Thank you very much.
Wow. Now, number 5, the last one. A pathetic civil society.
Our problem is a pathetic civil society. So the best thing about this problem is also the worst thing about this problem is represented all over the countries of EU. And we tackled 4 major issues that we think that should be handled in order to reduce this problem. The first thing is the problem of so-called shrinking social space. In translation, that means a state effort in reducing the activities of the NGO sector. this state effort manifests in two ways, and this is especially characteristic for the countries of Eastern Europe. First of all, it can be legislative, like in Russia, in Hungary, and other countries, when you have just simply a ban of gay propaganda, let's say, which practically stops the LGBTI NGOs from doing their work. Or like in Hungary, when you have these lists of NGOs that are declared as foreign agents, and they cannot do their work. That's the legislative approach. The unofficial approach is by doing public pressure on the NGOs. It's characteristic in Macedonia, in Serbia, I think in Croatia it was during the referendum, when the government just goes into a huge public campaign for declaring the NGOs as anti-state, traitors, Sorosoids, and things like that. So the good thing is that this problem has been noticed on the level of the European Union or the level of Council of Europe, and that it is specific for all types of NGOs, not just humanists. So lobbying at the EU level about the representation of this problem in our individual countries is one of the approaches. The other approach is raising the awareness at a national level, raising the awareness of the importance of the voice of the civil society and things like that, and thus reducing the restriction for activity of the civil society, and building coalitions. Building coalitions not only between different humanist organizations from different countries, but between humanist organizations and networks with other human rights NGOs or NGO networks. ILGA Europe is working on this issue, INAR is working on this issue, and that's something practical that we can use. The second problem is the lack of offline mobilization. Everybody is so happy to add their like, their share, their comments to a Facebook content, to an online content, but when it comes to offline mobilization, to getting your ass on the streets, it gets quite difficult. So how do we decide to approach this issue? First of all is the issue of simplified messaging. In order to have a mass outreach, you cannot go out with complicated doctrines, complicated analysis and stuff like that. You need to have that in order to be able to back your arguments up. But when you are addressing the public directly, you need to be as simple as possible, as clear as possible, and to tell the public what do you want to achieve with this activity. The other part is adding a performative element to the civil society actions that are public. We have found that in Macedonia and in other countries as well, if you make things interesting and not only activistic, there is a higher probability of having more people to the streets. And just by adding a flash mob or some small performance, for example, we did protests in front of the Public Prosecution Office, and we tried to present that the lack of the state activity and condemnation of the hate violence against the LGBTI people really kills the LGBTI people. So a lot of the activists were in black plastic bags, and they were just lying on the street, even though it was December and minus 15 degrees. A lot of them have had kidney issues afterwards. And they were presented just as corpses, like, look what your inactivity does to us. And it gained a huge public support in Macedonia, huge international public support and things like that. The third thing is the problem with getting our voice heard at a national and international level, mainly because, and this is specific to humanistic movements, also LGBTI movements and other natural allies, mainly because we are not liked by the mass media. Our messages are not considered to be right and things like that. So the key here is become a competitor to the mass media. Okay, they occupy a certain space. We need to find a way either to reoccupy the same space or to create an alternative space where we can translate our message. And one of the suggestions in this regard was creating a European level NGO-specific media, a way of transferring information and messaging and messages across countries, but also within the country and things like that. And there are other aspects of this issue that will be tackled with the following issue. The following issue is that we are strong in numbers, i.e. we need cooperation, we need support, and we need targeted communication. This cooperation is on an international level, but also on a national level. The success that we had in the lobbying against the Amendment 33 in Macedonia we raised the visibility in other European countries about what's happening in Macedonia. But simply if we went out and we were like, LGBTI people are discriminated in Macedonia, it's so hard, it's so difficult, we wouldn't have gotten through. What we did is we prepared a specific argumentation that was relevant for the European countries. For example, in Macedonia, the government tried to make a constitutional limitation of a specific human right related in the European Convention for Human Rights. And the relation between the Constitution and international conventions is different from a country to country. In some countries, the international conventions are higher than the Constitution. In other countries, they're at the same level. In third countries, they're lower than the national constitution. So it was a clear threat that if this thing passes in Macedonia, it will get a very easy module of other countries to do the same. Not only for LGBTI people, but for other issues. So we are like, look what's happening in Macedonia, it can happen in your country. It can happen for something else. Stop it before it spreads. And it kind of worked. The second thing is translation. And this is with become a competitor with mass media. So most of the media in my country, in all of your country, they have a specific number of articles that they have to publish that day. And reporters, just as everybody else, tend to be lazy. So if you get something of relevant from other country, if you translate it, and if you send it to the media, they will already have a prepared material that they can publish. And they very often do so. They just copy and paste parts. Of course, they don't write that you have written the material, but at the end, it doesn't even matter. What matters is getting your message through. So translate. Create targeted communication, like we did with the specific European countries. Reform the messages into making relevant for your target group, for different age groups, for different countries. Broaden the message. For example, if we have a specific issue, let's say in Romania there is a priest present in every government meeting, as I understood, or am I wrong? Yeah. So if that's the issue, you need to make that message interesting for other countries. How can you do that? You cannot say the priest bothers us. What you can say is the influence of the church is extremely high in everyday politics in Romania. And that high influence can translate on the EU level, on the level of Council of Europe. And if the Romanian voice in the Council of Europe, in the EU, is influenced by the church, that leads to a strong possibility for the final conclusions and solutions to be influenced by these guys. So we need to stop it. And that's it.
All right. All right. Thanks, first of all of you, for the work you've just done. I think now we have a working document. We have objectivable goals that we can all work for all our institutions. Just bring back the messages. I think you guys actually did a tremendous job, not only now, but also during the whole event. I don't know if you realize, but you can have mixed feeling about the situation. On the one hand, we see that religions all over the world are powerful, have a real problem with a lot of freedoms, freedom of belief, freedom of sexual orientation, with atheist thinking, with scientific reasoning. And, well, we're fighting something that's quite big, that's quite strong. I know that, and I heard it was very touchy that some of you had problems with your family, problems with your friends, problems with your bosses and your employees. I'm sorry to be so negative, but we have to look at the dark side of the question, and it is that we have actually a great responsibility. I mean, if you look at how the world evolved within religious systems and how the world will evolve as we see it, well, I think we have a lot of work. There is still a lot of countries and people to convince. There are still a lot of governments to help to evolve and to change. But on the positive note, we have kind of a cool weapon. I would say we have freedom, you know, and freedom is priceless. Freedom is a mental state with which you can approach any type of situation. We have social justice. We have Freedom of opinion, freedom of sexual belief, freedom to choose or not. Sorry? Reason, we have critical thinking, we have a lot of positive aspects, aspects that are priceless, aspects that religious people maybe don't have in such a developed way that we have. So maybe they had the past, actually. They forged a lot of things in our cultures, they forged a lot of things in the world, but we kind of have the future. And when I look at all you guys and I hear your brilliant minds thinking about how we can make it better, I'm become more enthusiastic, actually. I look at what's being wrong. You're all very aware of the problems, but you also all have a good idea of how to solve the problems. Now, I can understand that some of you may have it a hard time in your countries to try to explain to your family and your entourage that you have a vision, a positive vision for the future. But please just don't forget all the people that you met here at this conference. We all have the same problems, and we have the future. We can make it. We have the power to change humanity, to change mankind. I think within a few generations, they will look at your generation, at you people, as the ones who helped the world evolve, who helped the world change. And so don't lose your enthusiasm. Don't lose your motivation. Try to keep the good work up. Try to fight for freedom. Yeah, I think that's. I also would like maybe to say a little thanks for Cristina, because she did it.
So do we have a winner? Okay, 3 shots for everyone. Okay, yeah. At lunch, you'll choose between Jägermeister and tequila, because after lunch there's no more workshops, nothing. So you can drink. I won't feel responsible. Okay. Thank you, Ivan, for the great workshop. Thank you, everybody. Your ideas were awesome.